You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. So there's a term in psychology that's often referred to as emotional regulation. And that's what I want to talk about in this particular episode of the podcast. First of all, I want to look at what we mean by the phrase emotional regulation. And it basically means that whenever we feel a strong emotion, how do we kind of dance with that? So to regulate our emotions doesn't mean that we suppress things. It doesn't mean that we stop feeling things. But it means that when we feel a powerful emotion, how can we dance with it in such a way that it doesn't kind of overwhelm us? And so maybe, for instance, you're having difficulty in terms of managing anger or your temper, or maybe you're overwhelmed with feelings of sadness or maybe even anxiety. So these are all examples where some kind of emotional regulation might actually be helpful to you in order to bring you to a state that's more manageable. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you suppress or cut off those emotions. You be with them, but be with them in such a way that you feel them without them overwhelming you, or without them leading you to a place that you don't want to be led to, for instance, in terms of maybe losing your temper or whatever. Now, there are three things I want to look at when it comes to emotional regulation, three things that we need in order to help us get to a place where we're able to be with those emotions a lot easier, that they don't overwhelm us, but that we're able to maintain some kind of regulation with them. And those three things are, firstly, we need soothing. Secondly, we need reassurance. And thirdly, a theme that I often talk about on this podcast, we need safety and protection. So let's start with the first of those three, which is soothing. Now, if you think of a time where you've had a big spike of emotion, maybe you feel really upset, maybe you feel really hurt, maybe that hurt is showing as anger, maybe it's that you're feeling very fearful or anxious, whatever the emotion happens to be, when we're in the grip of a very strong emotion like that, then one of the things that we need is to be soothed. In other words, for somebody to be with our emotion, not to try and cut it off, but to just sit with us in that emotion, to kind of put the proverbial arm around the shoulder and not really do much with it other than to be there. Often we can go into fix-it mode when somebody seems very, very upset, and we'll notice that they're feeling very emotional. And there is a tendency to try and fix it for them. But what soothing is all about is about being with them. You know, the psychotherapist Marshall Rosenberg once talked about, that phrase that says, don't just stand there, do something. Well, when it comes to soothing, it's the opposite of that. It's don't just do something, simply be there. And so that sense of being with another person, having the arm around the shoulder, having them just allow you to have your emotions and be there with you and be a caring presence. That's what we mean really by soothing. The second one is reassurance. Now, reassurance is slightly different from soothing. Reassurance is that point where we need some sense of that things are going to be okay. We need some sense of we're going to get through this. So the soothing is almost like an acknowledgement of that this feels tough and it's okay for this to feel tough and I'm here for you while it's feeling tough. But reassurance kind of takes that next step on from that and says, even though it's tough, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Now, when we're seeking reassurance, that can come in all sorts of situations and is often associated with fear. And fear comes at the heart of many of these things, which is why safety is so important in a moment. But reassurance is that sense of it's going to be okay, that the things that you're worried about, that you're anxious about, can be reassured. So it may be in a relationship, for instance, and you might be thinking, I'm really upset because I don't know whether they want me anymore. I don't know whether they love me anymore. I don't know whether this is going to carry on. Then you can see in that situation there, some reassurance would be what the person needs. That basically whatever we're going through, we're going to get through. So we've looked at soothing and we've looked at reassurance. Now the third of those things is safety. Now the thing is, if we lack safety, then what will happen is, without that sense of felt safety, our nervous systems will do the very thing that they're supposed to do and trigger. If you're genuinely not safe, you really want your nervous system to go into fight or flight. You might even need it to go into a freeze place and shut down. And so whenever there's a sense of felt safety being not present, your nervous system is going to do that. And thank goodness, because your nervous system is meant to do that. Now, your nervous system will respond to this sense of not feeling safe, even if you're not in imminent danger. But that sense of safety, when you feel safe again, then that in itself is calming. So we're talking about emotional regulation. And I suppose what I'm saying is that if you don't feel safe, then it makes sense that you're not emotionally regulated. It makes sense that your nervous system is going 10 to the dozen. And so once we start to feel safe again and have a sense of feeling protected, that gives a cue to our nervous system that it's okay to be calm. And so safety is really at the core of this. And safety maybe is even at the core of the need for reassurance, because there's some fear at the basis of that. And fear comes from a lack of feeling safe. And so we've seen three things there that we need in order to help us just get a handle on our emotions. Remember, not to cut them off or push them down, but to be with them in a way that feels okay to be with, that they don't kind of drown us and overwhelm us, or even take us to places that we'll regret later. And so they're the three things that we need in order to bring that kind of emotional regulation in play. Soothing, that kind of there, I'm here for you, arm around the shoulder, I can see what you're going through and I can see how tough it seems. Secondly, the reassurance, and the reassurance is basically that sense of no matter how tough this is, we can get through this. That sense as well that whatever you're fearful of, I can offer some reassurance around that. You know, there isn't a monster under the bed, and I can promise you that. And the final one is just that sense of safety and protection, which all humans, all animals need, that sense of safety, because if it's not there, the nervous system is going to dysregulate, and it's meant to. Now, when you know that these are the three things that your system needs in order to better emotionally regulate, then it's helpful because then you can seek them out. So, for instance, if I know that I'm feeling very anxious, or if I know that I'm really, really upset, I can decide which people I could maybe go to who are really good at giving that level of soothing. I could maybe even ask directly for some reassurance. Let's say, for instance, that you are worried about the relationship. A direct ask of, I notice I'm really needing some reassurance. Would you be willing to offer some if it's the reality of the situation? Then a direct ask like that can get you exactly what you need. And in terms of safety, by noticing that if emotional regulation is difficult, that there might be a sense of safety that's needed, or even protection that's needed, then it allows you to try and get that need met as well. Now, sometimes, of course, we can get that need met through others. In fact, it's probably the most effective way of getting these needs met that will calm us down, as long as it's the right people, of course. Now, if you reach out to the right people, then just being with somebody else, as long as they're not somebody who makes you feel unsafe, if you reach out to somebody who makes you feel safe, then you'll automatically start feeling safer and calmer as a result. And of course, others can give you that sense of soothing and reassurance as well. Those others, of course, needn't be human. Many people will feel soothed, for instance, by stroking their cat, or being in the company of a dog or a horse, or any kind of animal, really, that brings that level of soothing and interrelationship. But once you know that these are the 3 ingredients for emotional regulation, it allows you to get to them. Now, one thing that is worth thinking about is I often use the resource that we all have, which is imagination, simply because so many studies show that our nervous systems actually do respond to imagination pretty much in the same way as it responds to any other experience. And so if you give yourself an imaginal experience, it's actually pretty much as powerful as a real one. And so one of the things that you can do, which can help in order to get you kind of soothing and reassurance and a sense of safety and protection, is to imagine kind of ideal parent figures. Now, this idea of ideal parent figures is actually one of the more proven aspects of psychotherapy. And what it kind of encourages you to do is just to imagine some ideal parent figures who are just completely suited to your nature. Now, it's probably impossible, isn't it, to expect anybody to be ideal parents because all parents are human. But in your imagination, you can get anything that you need from these ideal parent figures. And so what you can do is give yourself an imaginal experience of being soothed in just the way that you need to be soothed. To be reassured in exactly the way you need to be reassured in that moment. And to receive that kind of level of protection. Not overprotection and not underprotection, but just the right amount of protection and safety that you need in that moment. And it's useful to know this because even though co-regulation, that is, regulation with another person, including animals, is so effective, sometimes other people are not with us. And so by using these imaginal experiences where we can take our pain and take our emotional dysregulation and just close our eyes and give ourselves an imaginal experience of not only being soothed, but being reassured and receiving exactly the right amount of protection from these ideal parent figures that we can imagine for ourselves, it can be a very, very powerful experience. And when you give yourself that soothing and reassurance and that sense of safety, then in itself it becomes very, very calming. So let's have a recap then. We looked at this concept of emotional regulation. And emotional regulation doesn't mean that you push your emotions down. You actually fully experience them, but not in a way where they're going to overwhelm you and take over. And particularly not in a way which is going to lead you to places that you might regret afterwards. And there are 3 key ingredients of emotional regulation. We saw that 1 is soothing, that kind of presence and empathy that comes, that feels so soothing when somebody is simply with you. That sense of reassurance was the second one, where the person reassures your fears and anxieties, that no matter how bad the situation, you'll get through it. And finally, that sense of being safe and protected. And once you know what you need, once you know that these are the 3 things you need, you can then start going about actually getting them. And we saw, didn't we, that other people and indeed animals can be really good providers of these kind of soothing and reassurance and protection and safety. But the other way that you can actually get those things, if you're not with people and you're not with an animal that you trust, then you can actually imagine these experiences for yourself. You can actually close your eyes and imagine these ideal parent figures giving you the exact right amount of soothing in just the right way that you need, the right amount of reassurance in just the right form of words that you need to hear. And of course, giving you the perfect, ideal amount of protection. Not overprotection so it becomes suffocating, not underprotection so that you don't feel sufficiently protected, but the right amount of protection for you. Because when you have those imaginal experiences, they're very, very powerful. And they too will invite your system back into a state of emotional regulation. So you've got a number of routes there in order to get these three things you need. You can either get it from somebody else, you can get it from an animal, and you can even get it from your own imagination as well. So I hope that's been useful. If it has been, please pass it on so someone else can benefit as well. If you'd like to work with me directly, by the way, I'm Alun Parry, and you can find out more at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And of course, I work all over thanks to the fact that I work online, so you don't have to be anywhere near to Liverpool in order to work with me. And do subscribe to the podcast if you'd like to, because it means that you'll never miss an episode again. And of course, it's completely free to do too. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again on the next one.